Hello, everyone. Tonight you'll journey back over 200 million years to the Triassic period, where nimble dinosaurs like Coelophysis roamed ancient riverbanks and vast deserts. So sit back, relax, and let this gentle story carry you into a world before time, where life was just beginning to stir, and the stars still watched from the same sky. The sun is just beginning to rise over a vast expanse of prehistoric wilderness. We find ourselves over 200 million years in the past, in a world very different from the one we know. It is the Triassic period, a time when the Earth is healing from a great extinction, and new life is slowly taking hold. There is only one gigantic continent here, called Pangaea, and much of the land is dry and warm. There are no ice caps at the poles in this era, and the climate is warm all over the world. Vast deserts sprawl across the interior of Pangaea under a blazing sun. But near coasts and rivers, seasonal rains bring life to the land. Here along the riverbank, the ground is more fertile and lush compared to the arid plains beyond. In the early morning light, the sky glows a gentle pink and orange, revealing strange silhouettes of ancient trees and ferns. There are no flowering plants yet, no grass spreading like a soft green carpet. Instead, the ground is covered in low ferns, mosses, and horsetail plants, and clusters of tall conifer trees and palm-like cycads rise into the misty air. A soft fog clings to the earth near a winding river, and the air is already warm, promising a hot day ahead. Among the ferns at the edge of a light woodland, a small creature stirs. As the first rays of sunlight filter through the conifer branches, a slender dinosaur slowly opens its eyes. This is a Coelophysis, one of the earliest dinosaurs to roam the earth. Coelophysis, its name means hollow form, is a delicate and nimble animal, just about 3 meters long from nose to tail, but as light as a bird. In fact, its bones are hollow inside, making its body very lightweight and agile. In the dawn light, it stands on its hind legs and stretches its long neck forward, peering around with alert, golden eyes. Its body is covered in pebbly scales of a muted, earthy color, perhaps mottled with faint, darker stripes, helping it blend in with the reddish-brown soil and rocks around it. A long, balancing tail trails behind, and its head is narrow with dozens of small, sharp teeth lining the jaws. This little dinosaur is fully grown, but stands only about as tall as a medium-sized dog at the hip, and perhaps as heavy as a large turkey. Coelophysis is quick and agile, perfectly designed for survival in this Triassic landscape. The morning is calm and quiet, except for the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant calls of unseen creatures echoing through the trees. Coelophysis blinks and cocks its head, listening. All around, life is awakening with the sunrise. Insects begin to chirp and buzz, ancient relatives of crickets greeting the new day. A dragonfly with long, shimmering wings darts above the river's surface, catching the early light as it hunts smaller flying insects. Somewhere nearby, a chorus of tiny amphibians, perhaps early frogs, adds a soft, croaking undertone to the morning peace. Our Coelophysis takes a few cautious steps forward on its slender hind legs. Its 3-toed feet press into the damp soil as it moves through a patch of ferns, leaving light footprints that quickly fade in the springy moss. The little dinosaur has a curious and watchful nature. Though a hunter by instinct, it is also wary. because in this world dinosaurs are not yet the biggest or fiercest creatures around. Much larger reptiles ruled the Triassic lands and waters, so a small dinosaur like Coelophysis must always be on guard. The slender predator's belly is empty, and it is time to find breakfast. Coelophysis lifts its head and sniffs the warm breeze. Its nostrils flare as it picks up a variety of earthy scents. Moist plants, the tang of muddy water, and the faint musk of other animals that passed by in the night. With quick, light steps it moves out, one from the cover of the trees, into a more open scrubland by the riverside. The ground here is cracked in places, dried by yesterday's sun, with tufts of hardy ferns and cycads poking up through the rusty red dirt. Suddenly, the Coelophysis freezes in place. Its sharp eyes have caught a slight movement on the ground ahead. Near a cluster of cycads, a little lizard-like creature scurries over some rocks, pausing to lap up dew from a broad fern leaf. This small reptile, perhaps an early lizard or a distant relative of today's tuatara, has no idea it is being watched. Coelophysis lowers its body slightly, balancing on strong hind limbs, ready to spring. For a moment, everything is still. The only sounds are the gentle trickle of the river nearby and the soft buzz of a few insects in the cool dawn air. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, the Coelophysis lunges forward. Its feet kick up a tiny cloud of dust as it darts toward its prey. The little reptile notices the danger a split second too late. It tries to dash for cover under a rotten log, but the swift dinosaur is quicker. Coelophysis snaps its jaws and catches the small creature with a swift sideways snatch. A brief scuffle ensues among the ferns and fallen leaves. The Coelophysis's long neck and head thrash as it secures its breakfast. In a few heartbeats, the struggle is over. The dinosaur lifts its head, the tiny prey held in its mouth, and swallows it with a few quick gulps. It's a modest meal, just a few bites, but enough to start the day and give our Coelophysis a burst of energy. After its successful hunt, the Coelophysis lets out a soft clucking chirp, a sound rather unlike the fearsome roars we often imagine for dinosaurs, more akin to the call of a large bird or reptile. Perhaps it is signaling to others of its kind. Indeed, not far away, another slender shape moves between the cycads and shrubs. A second Coelophysis, likely drawn by the rustling sounds or the scent of the catch, appears from behind a cluster of horsetail plants. This one is slightly smaller, possibly a younger individual or a female. She approaches the first dinosaur carefully, bobbing her head and uttering a low, almost cooing trill as if in greeting. The two dinosaurs circle each other for a moment and seem to recognize that they are part of the same little family or pack. Coelophysis, it turns out, is not a solitary creature. More of them begin to emerge now that the sun is rising and light filters further into the scrubland. Soon, there are 4 Coelophysis moving about near the riverbank, our original hunter and 3 companions. They could be a family group or just a small hunting pack banded together for survival. In the gentle morning light, they keep in loose contact with soft chirps and occasional nuzzles. One of the younger ones darts after a large dragonfly that flutters too close, leaping into the air with a snap of its jaws, though it misses the quick insect. Another is busy scratching at the soil near a cycad plant with the clawed fingers of its forelimbs, perhaps digging for beetle grubs or worms hidden in the earth. Coelophysis is not a particularly picky eater. While it is primarily a hunter of small animals, It will happily snap up insects and might even nibble on tender plant shoots or fallen fruit if it's hungry enough. In the Triassic period, being adaptable is a key to survival. Food can be scarce in the dry seasons, and a little dinosaur must take whatever nourishment it can find. As the sun climbs a little higher, the heat of the day begins to build. The sky above shifts from pale pink to a clear, bright blue. On the horizon, the outline of distant conifer forests is visible. And beyond that, perhaps low hills baked by the sun. The river that winds through this landscape glints with reflections of the morning light. This river is a lifeline in a sometimes harsh environment. During parts of the year, heavy rains will come in monsoon storms, turning the river's banks into lush wetlands and filling seasonal ponds. But now the weather has been dry for a while, and the river's edges are lined with cracked mud. Only the deepest part of the stream still flows steadily, murmuring over smooth stones. The Coelophysis group makes its way toward the water. Even small dinosaurs need to drink, and they must be cautious as they approach the river. The lead Coelophysis, the one we first met, lifts its head high and scans the area, senses on high alert. It knows that larger predators might be lurking near the water's edge, waiting in ambush. In the Triassic, rivers and waterholes can be especially dangerous places. A simple, routine drink could become a fatal mistake if a crocodile-like hunter is concealed beneath the surface, or if a bigger beast is lying in wait nearby. At the muddy bank, the morning sun has dried some patches into a mosaic of curling clay. The Coelophysis steps carefully, its three-toed feet sinking slightly into softer, damp ground where the water still saturates the soil. Tiny clouds of midges rise up with each footfall, little swarms of insects disturbed from their resting places on the mud. One by one, the dinosaurs lean down and begin to lap up water with quick, bird-like gulps. The water is cool and refreshing to their parched throats. Rings of ripples expand on the surface with each sip, overlapping one another in ever-widening circles. On the far side of the river, a heavy shape wallows in the mud, mostly submerged except for a broad back and a pair of curved tusks that catch the glint of morning sun. At first glance, it might be mistaken for a smooth gray boulder or a mound of earth, but then it moves, and one can make out the form of a large animal. It is a Plateosaurus, a very different kind of creature that also lives in this Triassic world. Plateosaurus is not a dinosaur at all, but a type of ancient plant-eating animal called a dicynodont, a distant relative of mammals. It resembles a bulky, barrel-shaped herbivore, about the size of a large hog or perhaps a small cow, with a stout body and sturdy legs. Its face sports a strong beak like a turtle's and two downward-pointing tusks on its upper jaw. The Plateosaurus's skin looks thick, hairless, and somewhat wrinkled, currently coated in wet mud from wallowing. A few other Plateosaurus are nearby as well, half a dozen of them lounging in a shallow, muddy pool that the river feeds. They stay in groups, contentedly munching on tough plants like ferns and cycads. One uses its powerful beak to shear off fibrous, tuber-like roots from the riverbank, chewing slowly while blinking its small eyes in the growing daylight. Our Coelophysis pack eyes the Plateosaurus herd from a distance as they drink. The little dinosaurs are no threat to the adult Plateosaurus. Each Plateosaurus weighs several hundred kilograms at least, far too large for a Coelophysis to tackle. In fact, the danger runs the other way. A protective Plateosaurus, if provoked, could gore a tiny dinosaur with those tusks or crush one underfoot. So an unspoken truce holds. The plant eaters remain on their side of the watering area, and the Coelophysis stick to theirs, both groups satisfying their thirst under the warming sky. Bird-like pterosaurs, the flying reptiles of this era, also take advantage of the river's offerings. One of them, a small pterosaur with a wingspan no larger than a gull's, swoops down to snap up a gleaming silver fish from the shallows. It quickly ascends back into the air with rapid beats of its leathery wings, carrying its wiggling breakfast in its beak. The Coelophysis glance upward as the shadow of the pterosaur flits across the ground, but they soon return to their business. A few meters away, on a partly submerged log, a prehistoric turtle, about the size of a dinner plate, suns itself, stretching out its neck and webbed feet lazily. It shares the log with two bright blue dragonflies that have paused to rest, their wings sparkling like tiny stained glass windows in the sunshine. All seems peaceful at this riverside oasis, but peace in the Triassic can be deceptive and fleeting. The Plateosaurus herd continues to graze and wallow, unaware that danger is approaching through the cover of the three tall reeds and horsetail plants upstream. Another presence has been watching the scene, silently planning an attack. Eyes peer out low to the ground, full of predatory focus. Plateosaurus, one of the top predators of the Triassic, has been lying in wait. Plateosaurus is not a dinosaur either. It is a massive reptile closely related to the ancient ancestors of crocodiles, though it lives fully on land. At nearly 5 meters long from snout to tail, it is a giant compared to the little Coelophysis. Its body is powerfully built with sturdy limbs that hold it high off the ground in a posture more upright than a crocodile's. Its head, large and crocodile-like with a long snout, is armed with dagger-like teeth made for seizing and tearing flesh. For some time now, this stealthy hunter has been edging closer, belly almost touching the ground, using the cover of vegetation and the murmur of the river to remain unseen. It has its hungry eyes on the Plateosaurus herd. One of these hefty herbivores would provide a rich, filling meal. The Coelophysis nearest the water suddenly lifts its head, water dripping from its jaws. Something isn't right. Perhaps it caught a whiff of the predator's musky scent on the shifting breeze. Or maybe it heard a faint rustle of reeds that was out of place. The other Coelophysis sense the tension and stand motionless, heads turning this way and that, their yellow eyes scanning the area. For a heartbeat, everything is silent and still again. Even the insects seem to pause their buzzing, as if the whole landscape is holding its breath. Then, with an explosion of motion, the Plateosaurus launches its attack. It bursts out from the riverside thickets with a roar that echoes across the water. Mud and plants scatter as its clawed feet pound the ground, propelling its bulk forward at alarming speed. Its jaws gape open, revealing sharp teeth as it charges toward one of the Plateosaurus that has wandered a bit apart from the main group. Chaos erupts at the waterhole. The Plateosaurus react instantly, letting out grunts and bellowing snorts of alarm. The one closest to the attacker tries to wheel around and flee, its heavy body struggling for momentum in the slippery mud. Others in the herd splash and lunge toward the safety of deeper water, or scramble onto the bank on the far side of the river. The air fills with the panicked bellows of the herbivores and the snarling growl of the predator. The Plateosaurus closes the distance in seconds and crashes into the hindquarters of the slower Plateosaurus with tremendous force. The Plateosaurus, in its jaws, bellows in pain and swings its head desperately, trying to slash with its short tusks or bite with its beaked mouth. But the predator's onslaught is ferocious. They tumble together into the shallow edge of the river with a great splash, sending waves radiating outwards. Muddy water sprays high as the two creatures struggle, churning the riverbank into sludge. The rest of the Plateosaurus herd scatters. Some lumber into the water, causing the river to surge around them, while others climb the bank in blind panic, trampling ferns as they flee. During this commotion, the Coelophysis pack knows exactly what to do: flee and hide. In an instant, the small dinosaurs bound away from the water's edge. Their safety lies in speed and agility. They dart into the cover of the ferns and brush, long tails streaming behind like banners. One Coelophysis dashes behind a fallen tree trunk, pressing its body low to the ground, where the dappled shadows of foliage render it almost invisible. Another finds refuge between the gnarled roots of a conifer, peering out cautiously with only its eyes. Our original Coelophysis also sprints back into the reed bed we saw earlier. There it pauses, sides heaving as it catches its breath, and watches the dramatic scene from a safer distance. From its hiding spot amid the tall reeds, the Coelophysis can see the Plateosaurus and the unfortunate Plateosaurus locked in a life-and-death struggle. The water around them churns, a murky reddish-brown with stirred-up silt. The Plateosaurus bellows again, a deep, plaintive sound, and pushes with its stout legs, trying to break free from the predator's grip. For a moment it seems the herbivore might manage to pull away. It is powerfully built, and its thick hide and fat layer have protected it from the worst of the predator's teeth so far. It twists its body and manages to yank itself backward, almost pulling out of the Plateosaurus's jaws. The predator slips in the mud, and the Plateosaurus wrenches free, heaving itself forward with a surge of strength. The wounded animal struggles toward the bank, desperate to rejoin its herd, but the Plateosaurus will not give up its target so easily. Regaining its footing with a snarl, it lunges again, snapping its toothy jaws around one of the Plateosaurus's hind legs. The Plateosaurus squeals, a sound of pain and fear, and is toppled onto its side with a heavy splash. The predator pounces, using its weight to pin the herbivore against the muddy ground. Water splashes, and the Plateosaurus kicks up mud in a final frantic effort, but the Plateosaurus's bite is in a deadly spot now. With a few powerful wrenches of its head and the raking of its claws, the struggle subsides. The Plateosaurus falls limp and quiet, save for labored breaths that soon fade away. The hunter's patience and power have won out. Elsewhere, the remaining Plateosaurus have made their escape. A few stand in the deeper water upstream, watching warily with their nostrils flaring and eyes wide, sides heaving from exertion. Seeing their companion down, they let out low, mournful bellows to one another. Eventually, sensing that the predator's attention is fully on its catch and that nothing can be done for their fallen herdmate, the survivors begin to move further away. They wade upstream through the swampy shallows, heading for the cover of dense reeds and trees beyond. Their grunts and calls grow distant as they put space between themselves and the feeding predator, seeking safety deeper in the wetlands. In the aftermath of the attack, a hush falls over the riverside once more. The Plateosaurus drags its prize a short distance up the muddy bank, away from the water, leaving a trail of flattened sedges and crimson-tinged mud. There it settles in to feast, tearing into the flesh with powerful jerking motions of its head and jaws. It makes deep, rumbling sounds as it eats, a mix of growls and contented grunts, thoroughly absorbed in its hard-earned meal. Gradually, the normal sounds of morning begin to reassert themselves. The insects resume their chorus. Timid chirps and buzzes creep back into the soundscape as the immediate terror dissipates. The frightened turtle that had plopped into the water during the chaos pokes its head back above the surface, looking about with beady eyes to survey the now quiet scene. Those pterosaurs that had been fishing along the river slowly circle back from downstream, cautiously resuming their flight over the water, searching for any fish disturbed by the turmoil. Even the Plateosaurus herd's distressed calls have faded into the distance, replaced by the gentle rustling of the riverbank plants in the light breeze. For now, though, none dare approach too closely while Plateosaurus is still eating. Once the Plateosaurus finally moves off, a few timid scavengers creep toward the leftover carcass. Perhaps a small crocodile-like reptile, or even a brave little dinosaur will inch forward to pick at the remains, making a meal of what the giant predator left behind. In this ancient ecosystem, nothing goes to waste. In time, when the Plateosaurus has had its fill and lumbered away to rest and digest, the river's edge will be visited by these lesser diners who will clean up whatever is left. After some long minutes, our cautious Coelophysis and its packmates begin to emerge from their hiding places. At first they step out slowly, each movement measured and silent, pausing at the slightest rustle or unexpected ripple of water. They remain downwind of the Plateosaurus, keenly aware of the predator's scent and presence. They can still smell the sharp, coppery tang of blood in the air, a clear sign to stay wary. In the distance, they see the Plateosaurus still hunched over the fallen Plateosaurus, but the big reptile's posture is relaxed now, focused on its meal and not on any lesser creatures around. Keeping a wide berth, the Coelophysis group reconvenes under a stand of fern trees well away from the predator. They communicate with a few gentle clucks and chirrups, as if to check that each member of the group is unharmed after the fright. One of the younger Coelophysis emits a whistling peep and shakes itself, sending a spray of water droplets from its sides. It had splashed into the shallows during the frantic retreat and is now soaked with muddy water. Another Coelophysis leans over and nudges it, perhaps a gesture of reassurance or a quick check for injuries. The sun has climbed significantly now, and the golden hue of early morning is giving way to the bright white light of late morning. The air is hotter, and the shade beneath the trees is a welcome relief for the small dinosaurs. They have survived a dramatic encounter without any harm, and now it is time to settle down for a while as the day grows warm and still. Our main Coelophysis, still watchful, finally allows itself to relax a bit. It settles down on a bed of soft moss under the shade of a large cycad plant, folding its slender legs beneath its body, cat-like. Its sides move in and out as it pants gently to cool off, long neck moving with each breath. The rest of the pack also either lies down or sits nearby, the tension of the morning gradually melting away. Under the midday sun, many animals in the Triassic take refuge and rest, conserving energy until the air becomes cooler again. The whole valley seems hushed under the shimmering midday light. Only the occasional dry buzz of a cicada or the distant croak of a hidden amphibian breaks the silence. A gleaming dragonfly settles on a reed in the shallows, its stained glass wings catching the sunlight as even it pauses in the heat. In these hours of noon, life waits patiently for the cooler time to come. As the Coelophysis doze or keep half alert in the dappled shade, we can take a moment to look around at the broader landscape of this Triassic world that surrounds them. The land stretches out far and flat beyond the ribbon of green lining the river, with patches of woodlands and open scrub blending into one another. In the distance, reddish sandstone cliffs rise, carved by eons of wind and occasional rain into strange shapes. The soil, rich with iron, gives the ground and rocks a rusty red hue that seems to glow under the midday sun. This coloration tells a story of a climate that is often dry. Indeed, much of Pangaea's interior at this time is covered in vast deserts under a harsh sun. But here along the river valley, life clusters eagerly around the precious water. The vegetation is lush in comparison to the barrens beyond. Ferns unfurl their fronds in the moist soil. Cycads display crowns of tough, spiky leaves, and ginkgo-like trees with fan-shaped leaves offer pockets of shade near the water's edge. There are no bright flowers to dot the undergrowth. In this era, flowers have yet to evolve, and the first true grasses will not appear until many tens of millions of years later. Instead, cone-bearing plants and spore-bearing plants dominate the scene. The air carries the scent of resin from the conifer trees, a sharp, piney aroma mixed with the damp, earthy smell rising from decomposing plant matter along the riverbank. Now and then, a warm breeze sighs through, making the tall horsetail reeds sway and carrying with it the distant calls of creatures hidden from view. From the shelter of the ferns, one of the resting Coelophysis lazily watches a line of small armored creatures trundle by in the near distance. These are etosaurs, another kind of Triassic reptile. They resemble living tanks. Their backs are covered with thick bony plates forming armor from head to tail. Walking on all fours with their snouts close to the ground, they rummage through the underbrush for roots and fallen fruit to eat. The etosaurs are oblivious to the pack of little dinosaurs resting nearby. Likewise, the Coelophysis see no benefit in bothering these heavily armored plant eaters that are too large and well protected to be prey. So each keeps to its own. An etosaur swings its pig-like snout back and forth, flipping over clumps of leaf litter in search of edible tubers or insects, while its heavy armor plates clack softly as they rub against each other with each slow step. After a few minutes, the trio of etosaurs disappears into the undergrowth, the rustling of their passage fading into the background of midday sounds. Bresna, the sun shines fiercely now, dominating a sky of brilliant blue with scarcely a cloud. In the far distance, a few white, billowing clouds begin to gather, perhaps a sign that by evening there could be some relief in the form of rain, a welcome event in this warm season. But for now, the scene remains dry and still, and heat mirages dance on the open stretches of land beyond the river, making the horizon waver as if the rocks themselves are rippling. The Coelophysis pack remains mostly in place, conserving their energy. One stands up briefly to scratch at the bark of a tree with the small clawed hands at the end of its long, slender arms, possibly to dislodge insects hidden under the bark for a quick snack, or maybe to mark its presence with scent from glands in its skin. Another moves a few steps to find a more comfortable patch of shade, then settles back down with a gentle thump. The others simply lounge, eyes half closed, their sides slowly rising and falling as they breathe in the hot, still air. It is a tranquil scene following the excitement and danger of the morning, a quiet interlude in the day. In this gentle lull, with our Coelophysis group resting safely and the landscape around them sunk in noontime drowsiness, we will leave them for a short while and explore what other wonders the Triassic period holds. The Triassic world is vast, spanning many lands and climates, and while these Coelophysis nap under the high sun by the river, far away in another region entirely, different creatures are going about their day. In a greener land far to the south of the Coelophysis' river valley, the midday sun filters through a dense tangle of tropical vegetation. Here the landscape is different, a broad floodplain cradled by distant highlands and active volcanoes. Occasionally the deep earth grumbles. A distant rumble or a wisp of smoke from one of these peaks reminds every creature that the land itself is alive and changing. The soil is gray and rich with volcanic ash, and strange petrified tree stumps jut from the ground, the remnants of ancient forests long past. We are now in a region that will one day be part of South America, but in the Triassic it is simply another corner of Pangaea's endless expanse. The climate here is humid and warm for much of the year. Thick tree ferns and lush horsetails cluster along winding streams, and tall, primitive conifer trees and ginkgos cast flickering patches of shade on the forest floor. It is midday, and though the canopy above provides relief, the air is heavy with moisture and the earthy perfume of damp leaves and rich soil. Sunlight filters down in shafts through the gaps in the leaves, dancing with motes of pollen and tiny insects. Under a large fern frond, near a bubbling stream, a small head pokes out, cautiously sniffing the air. This is Eoraptor, another early dinosaur, one even smaller than Coelophysis. Eoraptor means dawn thief, a fitting name for one of the first true dinosaurs known to have walked the earth. It is a tiny creature by dinosaur standards, barely a meter long from its nose to the tip of its tail, and perhaps as tall as a house cat at the hip. Its body shape is similar in general plan to Coelophysis. It walks on two legs, has a long 7 balancing tail, and a lean, lightweight frame. But Eoraptor's proportions are different. Its head is short and keen, and inside its slender jaws is something unusual for a dinosaur of this time, a mix of different kinds of teeth. If we could look closely, we'd see some of Eoraptor's teeth are pointed and serrated like a little carnivore's, perfect for slicing meat, while others, toward the back, are more leaf-shaped or blunt, better for grinding up plant material. This little dinosaur is an omnivore. It eats whatever it can find in this lush environment. Juicy plant shoots, fungi, or fruits that might be around, as well as small animals like insects, worms, and maybe tiny lizards or amphibians. At the moment, our Eoraptor is foraging along the bank of the stream that winds through the ferns and conifers. It steps gingerly on the soft, muddy ground, leaving only faint impressions that will soon be washed away. Despite the hour, the thick forest canopy keeps this spot dim and relatively cool, so Eoraptor can be active even at midday without overheating. It uses its delicate, grasping hands to gently turn over a rotting piece of wood that has fallen beside the stream. Instantly, a few shiny beetles scuttle out from beneath the log, their carapaces glinting. Quick as a flash, Eoraptor snaps up one of the larger beetles with a peck of its jaws. Crunch! The beetle is crushed between its teeth and swallowed swiftly. The little dinosaur tosses its head, perhaps enjoying the morsel, and then continues to probe the undergrowth. Nearby stands a low-growing cycad plant with a crown of stiff, spiky leaves and a heavy cone at its center bearing large nut-like seeds. Eoraptor knows from experience that such plants can be a treasure trove. Often, small creatures nibble at the fallen seeds or the fleshy parts of the cones. The dinosaur pokes its snout around the base of the cycad and is rewarded by the discovery of a few soft, overripe seed parts on the ground. It picks one up in its little jaws and chews tentatively. The seed's outer layer isn't too tough, and Eoraptor manages to mash it enough to swallow. It's starchy and not as tasty as a bug, but it provides some energy. This eclectic diet, a bit of meat here, a bit of plant there, serves Eoraptor well. Being able to eat many things means it can survive when one type of food is scarce. As Eoraptor busies itself with its snack, the life of the forest flows gently around it. A pair of tiny, bright frogs hop near the water's edge, their skins moist and patterned in greens and browns to hide among leaves. They let out occasional chirrups, possibly communicating or maybe just enjoying the damp. Overhead, in the canopy of a ginkgo tree, something scurries. Likely a tree-dwelling lizard or perhaps a small squirrel-like mammal relative known as a cynodont. It knocks a piece of bark loose, which falls to the ground with a soft thud, but the little dinosaur pays it no mind. Eoraptor's presence doesn't bother the small mammal-like creature in the branches. At less than a meter long, Eoraptor is not a serious threat to an adult cynodont unless it found a vulnerable baby or egg. The cynodont, with its whiskered snout and furry body, is more concerned with nibbling a cone or insect up in its tree perch and with watching out for... And indeed, there are larger things in this forest. As Eoraptor moves along, nibbling a bit of fungus here and snatching a cricket there, the ground suddenly transmits a faint tremor. A series of vibrations too heavy to be the wind, too rhythmic to be thunder. Eoraptor stops mid-step, one foot raised slightly. The ridge of tiny scales along its back, almost a hint of a crest, quivers with alertness. Another subtle thud follows, and now the sound of snapping branches can be heard somewhere in the distance, growing nearer. Something big is moving through the underbrush not far away, and it's coming closer. The little omnivore's heart quickens. It raises its head, large eyes scanning, and its whole body tenses. A sense of danger pervades the humid air. Eoraptor wastes no time. Survival for a creature of its size depends on quick reactions. In a flash, it scampers into a dense tangle of roots at the base of a mossy tree, pressing its body low and still. Only 1/8 of its eyes remains visible through a gap in the roots and fronds, watching and waiting with nervous intensity. The heavy footsteps draw nearer, accompanied now by the swish of foliage being pushed aside and the occasional low, growl-like exhalation. Through the ferns and large cycads, we begin to see the source of the disturbance, a Eoraptor, the apex predator of this region's forests. Eoraptor is also a dinosaur, one of the earliest large theropod, meat-eating dinosaurs known. It is much larger than Eoraptor or Coelophysis, a true giant of its time. From snout to tail tip, it measures about 6 meters, roughly as long as a pickup truck, and it probably weighs around 300 to 400 kilograms. It stands on 2 powerful hind legs and balances with a thick muscular tail. Its body is lean and muscular, built for hunting with speed and strength. Long, powerfully built hind limbs allow it to sprint, and its forelimbs, though shorter, have strong, grasping hands armed with curved claws meant for seizing prey. The head of Eoraptor is narrow, with jaws lined by large, sharp teeth that curve inward, ideal for biting and holding on to struggling prey. This predator's bite is highly effective. Its lower jaw has a flexible joint that helps it grip wriggling victims without letting go. The Eoraptor appears from behind a stand of spiky cycads and a clump of monkey puzzle trees, a prehistoric conifer with stiff, sharp leaves. Its scaly skin is a mottled pattern of dark green and brown, dappled like the forest shadows, which made it hard to spot until it was quite close. The creature halts for a moment, lifting its head to sample the air. A forked, snake-like tongue does not flicker. That's not how dinosaurs smell. Instead, it uses glands in the roof of its mouth and its nostrils to detect scent. The predator's eyes, yellow and focused, scan the underbrush. It lets out a low hiss, almost like a giant reptilian sigh, as it picks up a scent trail. It smells something promising, the musky odor of other animals. Perhaps a group of herbivorous creatures passed by here recently, or a wounded animal is in the vicinity. The Eoraptor's senses tell it that prey is likely nearby. Quietly, it continues forward, each footfall deliberate, crushing twigs under its 3-toed feet. Eoraptor remains utterly motionless, hiding among the roots and the ferns. It hardly even breathes, and its heart likely hammers against its ribs. Through the curtain of leaves, the little dinosaur watches the larger one with one wide eye. The Eoraptor moves with a confidence that comes from being one of the top predators around. As it walks, smaller creatures scatter out of its path. A pair of armadillo-like reptiles, maybe etosaurs, rustle away into the undergrowth, and a primitive frog leaps desperately into a pool with a plunk. Suddenly, there's a clatter of movement to the Eoraptor's right. The predator and the hidden Eoraptor both turn their attention toward the noise. A trio of rhynchosaurs, pig-sized, beaked herbivorous reptiles common in these parts, are scrambling through the underbrush, clearly alarmed. These creatures have stocky bodies, strong beaks for cropping plants, and walk on 4 splayed legs. They often travel in small groups, rooting around for fern roots to eat. Now, however, they rush and scurry, squealing softly in panic. The Eoraptor must have gotten wind of them, or perhaps they got wind of it, and now they've broken cover. They are only a short distance away from the Eoraptor, separated by a stand of tree ferns. The predator's eyes blaze with sudden excitement. With a throaty grunt, the Eoraptor lunges toward the fleeing herbivores, its long legs covering ground in great, ripping strides. The forest floor, carpeted in fallen leaves and soft loam, trembles under its pounding steps. The rhynchosaurs bolt, scattering in slightly different directions, but generally all aiming to escape into thicker cover. Their squat bodies weave and duck under ferns, grunting as they run. Eoraptor huddles in its hiding spot as the chase bursts past. One of the rhinoceros, in its terror, darts very near the tree where Eoraptor lies hidden, its small red eyes bulging and beak snapping in fear. Behind it, closing the gap quickly, comes Eoraptor, jaws agape and claws outstretched. The predator's focus is solely on the rhinoceros. It doesn't even glance at the tiny Eoraptor concealed in the roots. For the little omnivore, the passing of the larger dinosaur is like living through a brief earthquake. The ground shakes, and a blur of green and the sound of panting breath rush by, mere meters away. The slowest rhinoceros, perhaps older or simply unlucky, is falling behind the others. Eoraptor zeroes in on this one. With a few more powerful strides, it overtakes the lumbering herbivore and swipes with a hand tipped in hooked claws. The strike catches the rhinoceros on its flank, drawing a screeching squeal as the animal is knocked off balance. It tumbles against a rotting log. Before it can right itself, Eoraptor is upon it. The predator's jaws snap down onto the rhinoceros' thick neck. And though the herbivore is stocky and strong, it's no match in this position. The forest erupts with noise. The rhinoceros lets out a shrill, almost pig-like squeal mixed with a gurgle, and the Eoraptor snarls, wrestling its prey to the ground. Leaves and dirt fly as the rhinoceros struggles, kicking up its stubby legs and swinging its head, but the predator's grip is firm. With a decisive crunch and a violent jerk of its head, the Eoraptor silences the smaller creature. The echoes of the scuffle linger for a moment between the tall tree trunks, then fade into the humid stillness. The two other rhinoceros, hearing their companion's fate and seizing their chance, vanish into the undergrowth with frantic rustling, likely to survive at least a bit longer. Eoraptor stands over its kill, sides heaving from the exertion, but otherwise unscathed. It has clamped its jaws around the prey's throat and upper body. After ensuring the rhinoceros is lifeless, the predator loosens its bite and looks around, jaws dripping. It emits a low, rumbling growl, not a roar to announce victory, that could attract unwanted attention, but a vocalization to assert possession to any creature that might be nearby. In these Triassic forests, even a top dinosaur predator like Eoraptor has things to worry about. There were reports, if animals could gossip, of giant crocodile-like pseudosuchians, immense predators nearly twice its length, roaming some parts of the forest. One of those could challenge a Eoraptor or steal its kill. As if acknowledging this, Eoraptor quickly drags the rhinoceros' body a short distance to a more sheltered spot between two large fallen logs, where it has some cover while eating. Eoraptor remains frozen, still hidden. It watched the hunt play out with both fear and a detached curiosity, as if knowing this is the way of life in its world. Now, as the Eoraptor begins to tear into the carcass with its teeth, Eoraptor stays put. The smell of blood and meat carries through the humid air, a scent that does make the little omnivore's stomach give a pang of interest, but it wouldn't dare approach now. However, Eoraptor is patient. It knows that eventually the big predator will have its fill and leave, and perhaps then there might be scraps to nibble on safely. For now, survival means staying unnoticed. The forest slowly calms down again. The immediate drama over, some of the normal background noises resume. A few cautious bird-like calls from proto-birds or small reptiles up in the canopy start up again. The breeze rustles through the leaves, carrying with it the rich smell of recent rain waiting to fall. Indeed, the air has a heaviness to it that suggests a storm might be brewing. The Eoraptor is busy feeding, ripping chunks of flesh and swallowing them with jerking motions of its head. Our Eoraptor remains concealed, only its bright eye visible as it watches the predator's every move. Within half an hour or so, as Eoraptor waits and Eoraptor feeds, nature adds another element to the scene. The sky, which had been a mix of sun and cloud, begins to darken. Those white clouds gathered 10 earlier have joined into a slate-gray blanket overhead. A distant rumble rolls across the forest. Thunder. A storm is approaching. One of those sudden afternoon downpours common in the Triassic tropics. Fat drops of rain start to patter down, first a few sporadic plinks on leaves, then a more steady drumming. The smell of petrichor, that wonderful scent of dry earth getting wet, rises around Eoraptor's hiding place as rain hits the warm ground. The little dinosaur flinches as a cold drop hits its snout. It blinks and pulls back further under the tree roots, finding a dry nook to wait out the squall. The Eoraptor pauses in its eating as a heavy raindrop smacks the back of its neck. It looks up, blinking against the sudden onslaught of rain that filters through the canopy. Within minutes, the light shower turns into a downpour. Sheets of rain cascade through the leaves, and the forest floor quickly becomes a mess of puddles and rivulets. The stream beside Eoraptor swells with newfound water, babbling louder and carrying twigs along its current. The predator huffs, annoyed. Its meal is getting waterlogged. With a final few gulps of meat, the Eoraptor decides that avoiding the worst of the storm is wiser than lingering. Clamping its jaws around a large portion of the carcass, perhaps part of a hind leg, to carry off for later, it turns and jogs off deeper into the forest, seeking a dry refuge under thicker cover or a rock overhang. Eoraptor peeks out from its hideaway. Rain drips all around, creating a constant, soft roar in the underbrush. The Eoraptor is already disappearing into the veil of rainfall, its silhouette fading among tree trunks. Thunder booms again, not too far away now, and a flash of lightning briefly brightens the dim forest with a white glare. Our little dinosaur is safe for the moment, and it steps gingerly out from under the tree roots, letting the warm rainwater wash over its back. The shower is heavy, but the drops feel refreshing after the earlier humidity. Eoraptor shakes itself, flicking water off its arms and snout. It looks toward the spot where the Eoraptor had been eating. The carcass of the Rhynchosaur is still there, albeit missing a chunk that the predator carried away. Scavengers will move in soon, no doubt. Right on cue, a pair of small, furtive shapes emerge from behind a fallen log near the kill. They are not dinosaurs, but rather two little reptilian creatures, possibly primitive sphenodonts, relatives of modern tuataras, or small croc-like animals, creeping forward to snatch bits of flesh. One grabs a strip of meat and scurries off, while the other busies itself with licking at the remaining bones. Eoraptor usually wouldn't dare contest a meal with even these creatures. But with the Herrerasaurus gone and rain masking everyone's sound and scent, it sees an opportunity. It trots toward the carcass, more boldly than usual. The two smaller scavengers, seeing Eoraptor approach, each grab what they can. One takes a chunk of gut, another a piece of skin, and scuttle away quickly, not wanting any trouble. Eoraptor is left at the remains of the rhynchosaur. It lowers its head and sniffs. There's a metallic tang of blood and the rich smell of meat. Not as fresh now, but still nourishing. Using the side teeth in its mouth, Eoraptor nibbles at a shred of muscle clinging to a bone. It's tough, but it manages to tear off a piece and swallow. It's not much, but every little bit helps in the wild. The rain pelts down on the little dinosaur as it picks delicately at what's left. All around, the forest is being transformed by the storm. A misty haze rises as the raindrops hit the warm ground, creating a thin fog near the surface. Pools form in every depression, and tiny streams of runoff trickle between tree roots. The green of the foliage seems to glow with a fresh vibrancy when lit by the occasional flash of lightning. Frogs, thrilled by the moisture, have begun a jubilant chorus, their calls rising in a loud, pulsating rhythm that competes with the drumming of rain. Some of these might be the Triassic ancestors of modern frogs, rejoicing whenever the sky blesses them with a deluge. The forest floor, just moments ago dusty and still, is now alive with movement. Earthworms wriggle out of the soil to avoid drowning, and leaf litter floats and swirls around. Having taken a few bites, Eoraptor is satisfied, or perhaps prudently decides not to linger at a site that will soon attract larger scavengers. It scampers back toward the stream, where the flowing water is quickly rising. With a little hop, it perches on a broad, flat rock that protrudes above the water's surface. There it hunches, allowing the rain to wash away any blood that may have gotten on its scales. The cool shower is soothing, and Eoraptor tilts its head up slightly, letting the droplets clean its face and the top of its head. Its alert eyes blink away the water as it keeps watching its surroundings. Even in this relative safety, it never pays to be careless. After a short while, the rain begins to let up. The downpour slackens to a light patter, and shafts of late-afternoon sunlight break through the thinning clouds. The forest is left dripping and glistening. Every leaf and frond is adorned with sparkling droplets. The air is cooler and fresh, filled with the scent of wet vegetation. A gentle steam rises from the ground as the warm earth evaporates the recent rain. Somewhere above, an unseen bird-like creature shakes its wings, sending a cascade of water down like miniature rain in the lower canopy. Eoraptor gives itself another good shake, flinging off a spray of water from its hide, and hops down from the rock. The storm is past, and with it the worst of the day's heat. Creatures begin to stir again. The little dinosaur notices a squat, furry shape emerging from behind a tree trunk a few meters away. It's one of those cynodonts, a mammal relative with a rat-like body, perhaps 2/3 of a meter long, sporting a mix of reptilian and mammalian traits. This cynodont has shaggy fur on parts of its body and a whiskered snout, along with a long tail and clawed feet. It likely stayed hidden during the commotion and rain, but now it smells the carrion of the rhynchosaur and is eager for a share. The cynodont trots over to the carcass, looking around warily. Eoraptor simply watches. There is enough left that it doesn't mind letting the cynodont have at it. The little dinosaur's already had some bites, and can always hunt more insects or lizards now that the rain has cooled the evening. The cynodont tears off a strip of flesh and sits back on its haunches to chew, its sideways jaw motion hinting at more mammalian chewing ability than a reptile's straight chomping. Eoraptor loses interest in the scene and instead busies itself scanning the canopy for any insects knocked down by the rain. It finds a fat cricket, dazed and clinging to a drenched fern frond. With a quick snap, Eoraptor plucks up the cricket and gobbles it down. By now, the clouds have nearly all drifted past, leaving the sky clearer and tinted with the first hints of sunset colors. The sun, sinking toward the horizon, peeks out under the remaining cloud layer and bathes the forest in a gentle golden light. Everything looks enchanted after the rain. Droplets hanging from every leaf reflect the sunlight, making the forest twinkle as if strung with tiny fairy lights. Eoraptor, feeling the lull that comes after a storm and a full belly, decides it's time to find a safe spot to rest. It has been quite a day for the little dinosaur, foraging, avoiding one of the biggest predators of its time, and even scavenging a bit from a kill, all amid a tropical thunderstorm. Trekking a short distance, Eoraptor reaches a familiar clump of tree ferns nestled against a rocky outcrop. Under the lip of a smooth boulder, sheltered from any stray drips, lies a dry patch of ground thick with fallen pine needles from a nearby conifer. It's an ideal spot to lie low. The Eoraptor circles the area, sniffing to make sure no snake-like reptiles or other creatures have taken up residence. Satisfied that it's safe, the small dinosaur settles itself down on the cushion of pine needles. It tucks its limbs close to its body and wraps its tail around, curling up snugly. Its large eyes remain open, but relaxed, observing the quieting forest with contentment. The air is cooler now, and the late afternoon has a tranquil quality in this part of the Triassic world. The only sounds are the drip-drip of water falling from saturated leaves and the occasional distant hoot or call of creatures hidden in the foliage. Eoraptor's eyelids grow heavy. It won't sleep deeply, it never does, always ready to spring up if a threat approaches. But it will rest, conserving energy and letting the aftermath of the rainstorm lull it. Perhaps it even dreams, in whatever way a little dinosaur might, of easy meals and gentle days. The vibrant forest around it is calm for the moment, the earlier violence and excitement now just part of the tapestry of its memory. Now we will leave this damp southern forest and our brave little Eoraptor to its rest. As the late afternoon sun breaks fully through the clouds, casting slanting beams of light onto the steaming forest floor, we journey onward to yet another part of the Triassic world, where more fascinating creatures await. The sun now drifts westward, and the afternoon light over Pangaea begins to soften into a golden hue. In another region of this ancient world, what will one day correspond to parts of Europe, an expansive plain stretches out, bordered by low, rolling hills. This region is drier than the steamy jungle we just left, though not an empty desert. Scattered across the plain are clusters of vegetation, groves of conifer trees with tall, straight trunks and feathery, needle-like leaves, and open stretches where hardy ferns and bushy seed ferns grow around the edges of seasonal waterholes. The ground here is firm and clayey, a light tan color with patches of reddish soil, baked hard by many days of sunshine. As late afternoon arrives, the temperature becomes more pleasant, and a gentle breeze flows across the flatlands, carrying the resinous scent of conifers and the earthy smell of dry soil. Upon this plain, a group of large dinosaurs makes its way slowly through the landscape. These are Plateosaurus, among the biggest land animals of the late Triassic period. Though impressive, these creatures are early cousins of the even mightier, long-necked dinosaurs, sauropods, that will arise in later ages. In their time, however, Plateosaurus stands as a true giant among its neighbors. Plateosaurus are early giants by dinosaur standards, although they are smaller than the enormous sauropods that will appear in the Jurassic. The largest among them reaches about 8 to 10 meters in length from its small head to the tip of its long tail, and might weigh on the order of 3 or 4 tons, akin to an elephant. They stand possibly 4 meters tall when fully upright. Despite their potential height, these dinosaurs often walk on all fours while browsing, but they have the ability to rear up on their hind legs and balance on their thick tails to reach higher vegetation. They are herbivores with small triangular heads on the end of very long, graceful necks, designed to browse among high tree branches as well as low shrubs. Their mouths have peg-like teeth suitable for cropping plants, and likely a beak at the front for stripping leaves. There are 5 Plateosaurus in this herd moving together. 2 very large adults, probably the dominant ones, each as long as a city bus, and a couple of slightly smaller subadults, not quite fully grown but still impressive in size. Trailing a short distance behind is a juvenile, smaller and more slender, perhaps only a few meters long. The hide of Plateosaurus appears to be a dull grayish-green color with a pebbled texture. Along their neck and back, they might have faint stripes or darker mottling, which helps to camouflage their sizable forms among the patterns of light and shadow. They walk on 4 legs when moving slowly. Their powerful hind legs take larger steps, while the strong but shorter forelegs follow. When they need to, they can rise on just the hind legs, especially to reach higher foliage. Each forefoot has a large thumb claw, a singular big spike that can be used to hook onto branches to pull them closer, or possibly for defense if ever this gentle plant eater had to fend off an attacker. As we watch, one of the adult Plateosaurus pauses beside a tall, conifer-like tree known as an Araucaria, similar to a modern monkey puzzle tree. This tree's crown is high up, but some of its lower branches with scaly leaves are within reach if one tries. The dinosaur positions itself deliberately. With a low grunt, it rears up on its hind legs, hind feet planted firmly, and tail bracing on the ground behind as a counterbalance. Now, the Plateosaurus stands like a giant kangaroo, its back almost vertical. In this posture, it can extend its neck even further, bringing its head into the higher foliage. Using its beak-like mouth, it grasps a mouthful of tough, spiky leaves and twigs and strips them from the branch. The leaves are fibrous and resinous, but the Plateosaurus doesn't mind. It masticates them with a combination of its peg teeth and possibly gastroliths, small stones in its gut that will help grind the plant material. After chewing a bit, it swallows the vegetation. With a satisfied huff, it continues to pluck more greenery from the branch, crunching steadily. Occasionally, the Plateosaurus uses that big thumb claw to hook onto a branch and pull it down slightly, bringing fresh leaves closer to its mouth. The sturdy branch bends under the dinosaur's strength, and needles shower down around its feet as it strips the foliage. Nearby, the other members of the herd are also eating. 2 of them are contentedly grazing on a thick patch of ferns that carpets a low-lying area of the plain. Their long necks sweep back and forth as they rake clumps of fronds into their mouths. They occasionally use a forefoot to scrape the ground, uprooting the fibrous plants slightly to get at the tender bases of the fronds. The juvenile stays close to one of the sub-adults, possibly its mother or an older sibling, and is nibbling at softer, younger ferns at the edge of the patch, ones that its smaller teeth can handle. The big adults occasionally pause their chewing to look around, their height giving them a good vantage over the flat expanse. They are keeping watch for any sign of danger. While Plateosaurus are massive, they are not invulnerable. Packs of smaller meat-eating dinosaurs might harass them, or a large crocodile-like predator could lurk near water holes.
And indeed, not too far away, concealed partly by tall, dry grass and the shadow of a rock outcrop, a predator watches this herd. It's a bipedal carnivorous dinosaur, perhaps something like a primitive theropod called Liliensternus, though the Plateosaurus do not know names, of course. This hunter is a bit larger than a Coelophysis, maybe around 4 to 5 meters long, with a lean build and keen eyes fixed on the Plateosaurus group. It has been trailing them at a distance, curious if it might get a chance to attack perhaps the juvenile or a straggler. But so far the Plateosaurus have stayed together, and the adults are alert. The predator licks its sharp teeth, waiting for an opportunity, a stumble, a moment of distraction. As the afternoon wears on, the herd continues foraging and slowly ambling in the direction of a known waterhole. The terrain gently slopes downward to a shallow basin where, in wetter times, rainwater collects into a small lake. Now, at the end of the dry season, the waterhole is much reduced. When the Plateosaurus arrive, they find a broad area of dried, cracked mud stretching around a central pool of water that still glistens with a few meters of greenish-brown water. Around the edges of this pool, lush reeds and sedges grow, and the mud bears footprints of many animals that have come for a drink. The Plateosaurus approach cautiously. The lead adult, being most experienced, steps onto the mud first, testing it. It holds its weight fine at the edge, but the adult knows to avoid the deep center of the mud flat where one could become stuck. The others hang back slightly, waiting for an all-clear sign. Seeing no immediate danger, the large Plateosaurus begins to drink. It spreads its forelegs a bit for stability and lowers its neck, touching its snout to the water. It draws the water up with slow, steady gulps. Its reflection in the pond shows a serene giant bending gracefully, ripples emanating from its mouth. After slaking its thirst for a minute, it lifts its head, water streaming from its beak, and gives a low rumble. This seems to signal to the others that it's safe to come forward. The other adult and sub-adult step onto the mud, their weight causing slight indents, but nothing dramatic. They, too, lower their necks and begin to drink in a line, side by side. The juvenile Plateosaurus is eager and thirsty and trots a bit hastily to the water's edge without much caution. In doing so, it wanders slightly farther out in the mud than the rest. The smaller dinosaur's foot suddenly sinks past the crust into a pocket of softer mud beneath. Instantly, the youngster squeals in surprise, a braying honk of alarm. It tries to yank its foot out, but the mud holds it like wet cement. The juvenile wobbles, flailing its long neck and causing ripples in the water, its eyes wide in panic. The nearest sub-adult, likely its mother or a protective elder, reacts immediately. She lifts her head from drinking and steps toward the juvenile, giving a deep, resonant call that sounds reassuring yet urgent. She moves carefully, not to blunder into the same soft patch. The adult leader also turns and watches intently, ready to intervene if needed. The stuck Plateosaurus struggles, pulling and twisting, its hindquarters trembling with the effort. With a loud slurping sound, its foot suddenly comes free, and the juvenile nearly topples backward with the momentum. It regains its balance and scrambles towards firmer ground near the others, mud dripping from its leg. The whole event lasts only a few moments, but the herd's calm has been disrupted. They all crowd a bit closer together on the solid ground, the adults rumbling and snorting as if to scold the young one for its carelessness, or perhaps simply expressing their concern. The juvenile stands close to the large adult now, breathing hard but seemingly unhurt except for being caked in mud up to the knee. It was a lucky escape. Getting truly mired can be fatal for a heavy creature, but Plateosaurus are strong, and the group was vigilant.
All this commotion has not gone unnoticed by the lurking predator. The smaller theropod had slunk nearer, while the Plateosaurus were distracted by drinking. Now it was as close as it dared, partially hidden behind tall grass. When it saw the juvenile falter, the predator tensed, muscles coiling to sprint if the youngster fell. But now that the little one is free and back among the towering legs of its guardians, the chance has slipped away. The predator emits an irritated, chittering hiss. It knows it cannot attack a healthy Plateosaurus adult. That would be suicidal. Even a juvenile, guarded by adults, is a risky target. With a last longing look at the herd, the predator decides to retreat. It silently backs away into the brush, thinking perhaps it will find easier prey elsewhere. Maybe a lizard or a distant smaller dinosaur that isn't protected by a formidable family. The Plateosaurus herd, largely unaware of how close they came to attracting a predator strike, settles back into relative calm. The adults, however, are now on higher alert. One of them raises its head often, scanning the horizon and sniffing the breeze for any hint of danger. They herd the juvenile more tightly between them as they move away from the waterhole. They have all drunk their fill, and as the sun sinks lower, they likely will head towards a stand of trees a short distance off to spend the night. The group moves again across the plain, leaving the waterhole behind. In their wake, they leave footprints in the soft mud, enormous, elephantine imprints that fill gradually with water. One particularly deep footprint made by an adult Plateosaurus earlier slowly becomes a tiny pond of its own, capturing a bit of the remaining water. Perhaps later, some little amphibian will take refuge in that footprint puddle, or an insect will lay eggs there. Not that the giant creatures would ever know.
They pass a cluster of cycads and head for the grove of conifers that stands on a rise nearby. These trees will provide some cover and possibly food if they decide to snack more before sleeping. The lowering sun casts long shadows across the plain. The Plateosaurus herd's elongated shadows stretch behind them, like long, dark giants mimicking their form. The light has turned a richer honey gold now, enveloping the dinosaurs and the landscape in a warm glow. A gentle breeze rustles through the tall grasses, which now appear golden and ripe in the evening light. High above, the sky is a canvas of soft colors, pale blues fading to pinks and oranges near the horizon. A few wispy clouds, remnants of the earlier potential for rain, are painted peach and rose by the setting sun. Pterosaurs, those reptilian aviators, can be seen gliding on the air currents overhead. There are at least 3 of them, perhaps heading back to a cliffside or tall tree to roost for the night. They silhouette as dark boomerangs crossing the pastel sky, occasionally giving high-pitched, far-carrying calls that sound almost like distant seabirds. The Plateosaurus communicate among themselves with low-frequency sounds, a mix of grunts and resonant rumbles that we humans might almost feel more than hear if we were standing nearby. As they approach the tree line, one of the big adults issues a deep call, and the others gather close. They will likely form a loose circle or huddle to rest, with the young ones safely nestled in the center. They might not lie down fully. A creature of that size could risk circulation problems, lying prone for too long, but rather they may settle onto their haunches or rest against a trunk, dozing but not completely losing vigilance. In this serene late afternoon moment, we take leave of the Plateosaurus herd. They continue into the dusk, their great forms becoming silhouettes among the darkening green of the conifer grove. We can imagine them gently rumbling to each other as the first stars appear. They have had a day of peaceful grazing with only minor scare, and now they can hopefully pass a quiet night. As they fade from our sight, we turn our attention to the broader landscape around them, where the day's end is orchestrating a gentle, beautiful close. The Triassic world is preparing for night, and a different melody of life is about to begin. For a short time, everything is painted in soft hues and the world holds its breath, an interlude between the bustling day and the lively night to come.
Now day yields to evening across the Triassic world. The brilliant oranges and pinks of sunset slowly melt into deeper purples and blues overhead. In the river valley where we first met Coelophysis, dusk brings a welcome relief from the heat of the day. The Coelophysis pack, which spent the hot midday hours lying low and resting, grows active again in the cooler air. They chirp softly to one another as they move through the lengthening shadows to a safe spot they seem to know well. They choose a small grove of ancient trees not far from the riverbank on a gently rising knoll of ground dotted with large boulders. Here they will have some protection through the night, the stones at their backs and an open view downhill toward the river in front of them, giving advance warning of any approaching danger. The little predators mill about, taking final sips of water and snapping at twilight insects. One Coelophysis catches a fluttering moth-like creature that has emerged in the dusk, leaping up to snatch it right out of the air. It lands back down with a soft thump, crunching its tiny prize. Another gives a wide yawn, its jaws opening and showing those needle-like teeth in a gesture that looks almost like a grin. Perhaps it's signaling that it's time to settle down. The sky above has deepened to a rich indigo, and the first stars are twinkling high up. There is no glow of city lights, no pollution, nothing to dim the night sky. So as darkness spreads, countless stars emerge, more than most of us ever see in our modern lives. The band of the Milky Way, a river of light made of billions of distant stars, arches overhead like a pale, shimmering cloud. A crescent moon is risen too, bathing parts of the river in silver and casting gentle shadows of trees and dinosaurs on the ground. 16. In the grove, the Coelophysis begin to settle for the night. Each one finds a spot to its liking on the ground, perhaps nestled between the roots of a tree or beside one of those comforting boulders. They fold their legs beneath their bodies, resting on their bellies, and some curl their long tails around themselves for a bit of extra warmth or sense of security. A couple of them remain sitting upright for a while, acting as sentinels while the others get comfortable. These alert ones occasionally give a cautious sniff of the breeze or a quick glance around, guarding against any nighttime prowlers. The others close their eyes or let their eyelids droop heavily, still breathing steadily and ready to leap up if an alarm is sounded, but otherwise at ease. One dinosaur shuffles closer to another, and they rest their necks alongside each other, a touch of companionship in the dark. The chorus of the night begins to swell around them. From the direction of the river comes a symphony of croaks, frogs and toads celebrating the cooler, damp night air. Tree crickets hidden in the foliage start up their rhythmic chirring, a soothing, monotonous trill that fills the background. In the distance, a high trill of some insect, or perhaps a small nocturnal reptile, pulses on and off. The night in the Triassic has its own language of sounds, and to our Coelophysis drifting in and out of light sleep, these are the lullabies of their world. A gentle breeze picks up, rustling the fern fronds and carrying the earthy scents of damp soil and wood. The Coelophysis sentinel cocks its head,
listening. It hears only the usual nightlife sounds. All seems well. It lets out a soft cluck, almost like a sigh, and then it too settles down, lying its slender neck along the ground. Perhaps they will take turns keeping watch through the night, but for now, each enjoys the calm. Not all animals sleep through the night. In fact, as the dinosaurs doze, other creatures take the spotlight. In the shadows, beneath a nearby rock, a stout scorpion creeps forward, pincers held ready as it hunts for unwary insects. High in the branches of a ginkgo tree above, a spider has woven a silken web that now glistens with tiny dew droplets, waiting patiently for a moth drawn by moonlight. The nightlife of the Triassic is full of such small, hidden hunters. Under a fallen log near the tree grove, a tiny nose twitches in the darkness. A small, shrew-like creature, one of the very first mammals or their close relatives on Earth, steps out quietly. This furry little animal is not much larger than a mouse, with a pointed snout, glossy eyes, and a coat of fine fur that helps keep it warm when the air cools at night. It's active now, under the cover of darkness, when the bigger reptiles are less active or cannot see as well. By being nocturnal, it carves out an existence relatively safe from the larger predators of the day. The shrew-like mammal sniffs the air, catching the scent of many things at once. It smells the mammal is out foraging. It has a family to feed in a snug burrow under that fallen log. It has a litter of tiny babies waiting. Like some early mammals of this time, this creature likely lays eggs. Imagine something like a tiny monotreme, which hatch into very undeveloped young that then drink milk from their mother. Yes, this little survivor has a remarkable trait unique among most animals of the Triassic. She nurses her young with milk. In her burrow, her babies are blind, hairless, and utterly dependent on her. But they are safe there for now, and she must eat to produce more milk and keep herself strong. She scurries softly beneath a bush where she finds what she's looking for, a colony of winged insects gathered on a stem, perhaps a group of termites or flying ants that emerge during the warm evening. With quick, precise movements, the mammal picks off insect after insect, crunching them or stuffing them into her cheek pouches. She doesn't eat everything on the spot. Some she is collecting to bring back to her babies. Each insect is a little packet of protein and fat, just what her growing pups need, in liquefied milk form, and what she needs to keep producing that nourishment. In the dim light, you can just make out her silhouette, standing up on her hind legs to reach a particularly high bug. She has tiny claws that allow her to climb a bit, and indeed, if not for the presence of dinosaurs, creatures like her might one day evolve to fill the trees. As she feeds, she remains ever vigilant. At one point she freezes, nose in the air. One of the Coelophysis stirred, perhaps catching a faint rustle. The small mammal stands stock still, blending into the dark shadows. The dinosaur sentinel lifts its head slightly, eyes glinting in the starlight, and sniffs. It hears nothing now. The mammal is silent. The scorpion and spider are still. Even the frogs seem momentarily hushed. The Coelophysis eventually makes a soft grunt and relaxes again, settling its head back down. The little mammal closes its eyes for a second, as if sighing in relief. That was close, but caution and darkness are her allies. She continues her rounds, finding a fat caterpillar on a fern and nibbling it in half, then slurping the rest. A rather messy treat, but full of nutrients. A few beetles crawling on the underside of a log are quickly added to her stash, eventually her cheeks nearly bulging with bits of insect, and a full belly for herself as well. She decides it's time to return to her burrow. Swiftly, she scampers back toward the fallen log. At the entrance, she pauses to check for any unwanted visitors. Perhaps a snake-like reptile could have slithered in. But all is clear. She disappears into the earth, back to her tiny world beneath. If we imagine it, we can almost hear the faint squeaks of her babies as she regurgitates or prepares the food for them and curls around them to provide warmth. In the chill that will come just before dawn, her warm-blooded body and fur will be a boon that cold-blooded creatures cannot provide to their offspring. Midnight passes, and the Triassic night deepens. The great bulk of the Plateosaurus herd, miles away now, stands dormant under their trees, their forms barely discernible in the darkness, save when the moon peeks out and edges them in silver. The Coelophysis pack sleeps in their grove, occasionally one shifting or giving a quiet cluck if a dream or noise disturbs it, but mostly still. Across the broader landscape, most of the daytime creatures are silent and hidden. The Plateasaurus are likely dozing in muddy hollows. The Eoraptor we met is probably resting in a dense fern thicket somewhere, stomach full and untroubled, at least for now. In the rivers and lakes, the phytosaurs, those crocodile-like reptiles, float with only their eyes above water, mostly inactive until morning, unless a fish swims too close to their toothy jaws. However, night in the Triassic is not without its share of lively activity. Aside from our mammal friend and the smaller hunters, some larger predators might use the darkness to their advantage. In some regions, there could be species of nocturnal theropods. Maybe not true in the Triassic, as far as we know, but it's possible some hunters found it advantageous to stalk at night. If so, they too would be on the prowl now, moving under the cover of darkness with keen senses attuned to the rustling of a sleeping animal or the scent of a carcass. But in our little corner of the Triassic night, things remain peaceful. Only gentle sounds continue. The rhythmic cricking of crickets, the soft hoots or calls of distant night creatures unknown to us, the whisper of wind through cycads and conifers. Above, the stars slowly wheel in their courses. The constellations are somewhat different in this ancient time due to the gradual drift of stars and the orientation of Earth's axis. But it's the same sky at heart, the same universe watching over these prehistoric beings. A bright meteor suddenly streaks across the sky, a silent blaze of light that lasts only a second, but might have caught the eye of a wakeful Coelophysis sentinel who would not comprehend it, yet perhaps felt a moment of wonder at the brief spark in the heavens. In the wee hours of the late night, the temperature drops slightly. A light mist forms in low-lying areas, especially near the river and ponds, hazing the ground with a thin veil. The Coelophysis huddle a bit closer together instinctively. One even rests its head on the flank of another, and the other doesn't protest. The shared warmth is welcome. Through the night, they remain mostly motionless, conserving energy for the trials of the next day. Each breath of each animal is a small cloud in the cooler air, dissipating into the night. At last, there are subtle changes in the quality of darkness. The eastern horizon, invisible behind hills or trees, begins to lighten almost imperceptibly. The stars overhead begin to fade one by one as a very gentle grayness grows. Night's chorus yields gradually to the first tentative calls of day creatures, a lone chirp of a morning insect here, the brief squawk of a half-awake pterosaur there. The deep purple sky turns to a lighter bluish hue. In the Coelophysis grove, one of the dinosaurs, the ever-vigilant sentinel, senses the change. It hasn't slept deeply. Now it rises to its feet, shaking off the dew collected on its scales. It gives a short, soft cry, a kind of all clear mixed with wake up call. The others stir. The little pack made it through the night unscathed. One by one, Coelophysis unfurl from their curled, sleeping postures. They stretch their limbs and arch their backs, much as a bird might after a night roosting. A couple of them make gentle, squeaking trills, possibly the Triassic equivalent of yawning. The eastern sky grows brighter, a pale pink light creeping upward. A thin ground mist still clings to the river, making it look like it's steaming. The air is cool, almost crisp, and for a brief period, the sweltering heat of yesterday is forgotten. A new day is dawning. The Coelophysis take advantage of the cooler morning to get moving. They will head to the water for breakfast hunts, just as we saw them do before. Sure enough, barely minutes after waking, one has already caught a large beetle under a rock and is crunching it happily. Another peers into the distance, where the first rays of sun are just peeking over the horizon, lighting up the underside of the few scattered clouds in brilliant gold. All across the Triassic world, dawn arrives. In the forest where Eoraptor sleeps, soft light filters down, coaxing birds, or rather, their distant proto-relatives, to begin chirping and sending small lizards scurrying to warm themselves on rocks. Our Eoraptor blinks awake as a shaft of sunlight finds its hideaway, perhaps surprised to find itself a bit damp but safe after the storm and night. It will go back to the stream to find breakfast soon, checking on whether any fruit fell in the storm or if any insects are out with the morning sun. Over on the plains, the Plateosaurus herd also greets a new day. They have passed the night peacefully under their grove of trees. As the dim light grows, one of the big adults emits a low bellow to gather the group. The juvenile, having slept pressed against the side of its mother, now bounds a little in playfulness, perhaps happy to see the sun. They will soon lumber out to an open field where fresh dew lies on the ferns, ready to continue their endless feast. Maybe today they will wander to a new valley entirely, seeking untouched vegetation. The little mammal mother, who spent the night nursing her pups and resting, will soon peep out again. But she must be careful. Daylight is not her friend. So after a quick look at the brightening sky, she likely decides to block the entrance of her burrow with some leaves and sleep through the day, her young ones curled beside her, dreaming their simple, warm dreams. As morning firmly takes hold, the Triassic world is again bustling with life. The cycle continues. The hunters ready to hunt, the grazers ready to graze, the flyers already on the wing, snapping at early bugs above the river. The sun climbs higher, the mist begins to burn off the water, and the heat will soon return. It's as if the land itself is waking up from a short slumber and stretching toward the sun. This ancient world is at once alien and familiar. Alien in the sense of its creatures and configurations, an Earth with one supercontinent, populated by beings we have never seen alive. Under stars arranged in patterns just a little different, yet familiar in the rhythms of life. Day follows night. Creatures big and small seek food and water, care for their young, avoid danger, and find rest. The Triassic period is the dawn of the age of dinosaurs, and we have had the privilege to wander through it for a while. These humble early dinosaurs, Coelophysis, Eoraptor, Plateosaurus, and their contemporaries show us the beginnings from which giant wonders will grow. In a few more million years, after another great shift in the world, indeed, a mass extinction at the end of the Triassic will wipe out many competitors. Dinosaurs will rise to dominate the Earth in the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods, attaining sizes and shapes even more fantastical. But here and now in the Triassic, we have seen their simple, earnest start, small, quick hunters darting among bigger creatures, moderate-sized herbivores testing the heights of trees, life finding ways to thrive in a world recovering and rebuilding from past catastrophe. Now it's time for us to gently leave this prehistoric realm and return to our own time. The sun that warms the Triassic landscape is the same sun that will warm our faces tomorrow morning. The moon that shone on those early dinosaurs is the same moon that watches over us tonight. Though tens of millions of years stretch between us and them, there's a continuity to life, an unbroken thread that connects every living thing across time. In the whisper of wind through ancient ferns and the gleam of sunlight on primeval rivers, we can feel that connection. As you sit or lie here, relaxed and calm, imagine once more the scenes we explored. A quiet river at dawn, with little dinosaurs quenching their thirst. A broad plain, glowing at sunset as giant herbivores peacefully graze. The shimmering constellations above a sleeping world of reptiles, and the gentle rustle of a small, furry creature caring for her young. Let these images float in your mind like a warm, comforting dream. You have traveled through millions of years tonight, witnessing fierce hunts and gentle moments, dramatic storms and tranquil twilights. The details and colors of the Triassic may slowly fade now, but the feeling of wonder can remain, ready to inspire pleasant dreams. Our cozy story of the Triassic world comes to its end. The ancient sun has set and risen once more in our tale. And now, in reality, night has fallen here, and it may be time for you to rest as well. Imagine that you are in that safe grove with our little pack of Coelophysis. The night all around is friendly and warm, and you are as snug and secure as a dinosaur hatchling tucked beside its mother. Hear the distant chorus of Triassic frogs lulling you to sleep, and the soft whisper of the evening breeze through cycads as your lullaby.
Thank you for journeying back in time on this gentle adventure. May your dreams carry you over warm, prehistoric landscapes, under starry, ancient skies. Good night, and sleep well, with the peaceful knowledge that even in the age of dinosaurs, under the same moon and stars, nights were calm and mornings were full of hope and light. Sweet dreams.